Let's rank the top 15 wide receivers in the Big Ten. I've already done the SEC, the Big 12 wide receivers. I've done the running backs and the quarterbacks for all the conferences, so go check that out if that interests you at all. And this was a hard one. This, just like the Big 12 yesterday, was a hard one. The SEC was pretty straightforward, as straightforward as a ranking gets. But this one was tough, especially on the back end. So as I always say, I'm leaving a few good names out. So some honorable mentions that didn't make this list that I think are going to be really good this year. Indiana fans, don't hate me, but I'm leaving 3 of your top 4 receivers off. And that just goes to show you Indiana has a loaded receiving room, surprisingly. And most of it's from the portal because of Curts coming over from James Madison and bringing some players with him. They also got Miles Cross that I'm leaving out from Ohio. Him and Curtis Rourke come over together. They come as a duo, and they are a really good duo. Miles Price from Texas Tech that transferred to Indiana this offseason. I'm leaving him out. And Donovan McCulley, the only true Indiana player, I'm also leaving him out, the former quarterback turned wide receiver. But you do get one guy on this list, and I'll talk about him later. Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, not necessarily leaving him out for any reason. He's just a true freshman, but he is the #1 recruit in 2023, and he already has so much hype and expectations around him. Cannot wait to watch him this season for Ohio State. From Penn State, Julian Fleming, the transfer from Ohio State. He transferred to Penn State this offseason, and that is going to be so beneficial for Drew Aller and that Penn State offense that struggled so much on the receiving end last season. So those are some really good guys that I'm leaving off this list. Number 15, Taj Felton at Maryland. He's coming off a really good season there, over 700 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2023. He's going into his 4th season in college football, and Maryland's entering new territory with a brand new quarterback. It seems like Talia Tagovailoa was there for so long. Now he's gone to the NFL. They bring over MJ Morris to start at quarterback this season, and it's going to be different for that offense and Mike Locksley. Number 14, Bryce Curts at Northwestern, coming off a really good season in 2023 for him, over 700 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's going into his 5th year of college football, and just like Maryland, Northwestern is having a quarterback change as well after a really good season by Ben Bryant last season, and kind of a crazy season for Northwestern to make a bowl game after firing their coach early on in the season, getting David Braun to be the full-time guy, and he led them to a bowl game and a bowl win over Utah. Insane success story there. Hope it keeps going for 2024, but they do have to figure out the quarterback position. Last year was Ben Bryant. Like I said, he had a really good year. Brandon Sullivan was the starter until he transferred. Now it's up to Jack Losh. Ryan Helinski is battling for it, and Vanderbilt and Mississippi State transfer Mike Wright, to me, will be the starter at some point in the season. I think he's the best out of those 3, but we'll see. Bryce Curts is a hell of a wide receiver. All right, I need to get through these a little quicker. Number 13 is Isaiah Neer, the new wide receiver at Nebraska. He's going into his 5th year of college football, spent his first 3 seasons at Wyoming, where he had a breakout 900-yard season in 2022. Transferred to Texas, had a lot of hype around him. I thought he was going to have a breakout year again at the national level, but he ended up getting injured, only played in 1 game. Transfers to Nebraska this offseason. He's going to be a huge help and safety valve for Dylan Raiola and that Matt Rule offense. Number 12, J. Michael Sturdivant at UCLA. He's going into his 4th season. Spent the first 2 years of his career at California, where he was really good. Transferred to UCLA last year and had a really good season. 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. Had a weird quarterback problem at UCLA last year under Chip Kelly with Dante Moore, the 5-star that is now at Oregon, and Ethan Garbers, who is now the full-time starter at UCLA, and that's who Sturdivant will be catching passes from this season. Also, doing this ranking, I remember I left off Logan Loya at UCLA as well, so shout out to him. I think both of them are going to be really good for Deshaun Foster and Ethan Garbers this year. Number 11, Jeremiah Hunter at Washington. Another Cal transfer, like I just talked about with J. Michael Sturdivant, another Cal transfer, and he was Cal's leading receiver the last 2 years. He comes over to be a big help for new quarterback Will Rogers at Washington after their national title run last season. And Will Rogers, I'm very high on him. Obviously, if you haven't seen my Big Ten quarterback ranking, go check that out. It might shock you how high I am on him. But Jeremiah Hunter had a really good season for Cal last year. over 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. And in 2022, he almost had a 1,000-yard season for Cal. So that's what Washington is getting in Jeremiah Hunter. Number 10, Kaden PR, the second Maryland receiver I've talked about on this list. So they should be, him and Taj Felton should be so helpful for MJ Morris this coming season. Had a really good year for him, 700 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's going into his 4th season in college football, and he spent his first 2 at West Virginia. Number 9, Jamal Banks at Nebraska, another transfer for Nebraska. Their best 2 receivers, Isaiah Neer and Jamal Banks, are both transfers, and they'll be so helpful for Dylan Raiola in his first year. Jamal Banks has spent the last 4 seasons at Wake Forest, had 700 yards and 4 touchdowns last season. He's going into his 5th year of college football, and I cannot wait to see him in that Nebraska offense. Hopefully change the whole passing game, especially for what it was last year. Number 8, Derrick Miller, the new wide receiver at Rutgers. And Rutgers fans, if you don't know him by now, be excited for him and just be really excited for this coming season. But if you don't know him by now, you're probably not a true Rutgers fan, so don't even worry about it. Derrick Miller is going to be so helpful for Ethan Kaliakmanis, who I ranked as the worst quarterback in the Big Ten heading into 2024. He's going to be so helpful for him. He comes from Monmouth. He spent 4 seasons there, and last season he had 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns. Just an absolute weapon. Rutgers does have one of the best running backs in the conference in Kyle Monangai, so Monangai and Derrick Miller are just going to bounce off each other and really help Rutgers to have a better offense than they did last year. Number 7, Will Pauling at Wisconsin, coming off a really good year. He's going into his 4th year in college football, spent the first 2 at Cincinnati, and last year for Wisconsin had 850 yards, I think 6 touchdowns, but now he gets an upgrade at quarterback. Instead of Braden Locke, and I forget the starter from last year, it's blanking on me, but he gets Tyler Van Dyke, the former really good quarterback in Miami in 2021. I think that was his freshman season. Really good then. Struggled in 2022 and definitely struggled last year. But he comes to Wisconsin, and him and Luke Fickell should team up and be a really good combo. And Will Pauling is going to do nothing but help that. Number 6, Zachariah Branch at USC, one of the fastest guys in the country. Last season, in his true freshman year, he only had 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, and that could be a knock on him at the wide receiver position. But when you factor in what he does on the kick returns and punt returns, I mean, he had 1 kickoff return for a touchdown and 1 punt return for a touchdown last season, just in the month of September. I think just the first 3 weeks. So he is just electric, so fun to watch, and he's going to be awesome for Miller Moss in that USC offense this year. Number 5, Elijah Sarat, the new wide receiver at Indiana, brought over from Curts from James Madison. And this was the one Indiana receiver I had to put on this list because this guy is so good. He spent his freshman year at the FCS level. I think it was like St. Francis or somewhere. Came to James Madison last year and just balled out for Jordan McLeod and Kurt Signetti. 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns. And this year at Indiana, he's going to be catching passes from Curtis Rourke. Going to be a fun combination to watch. Number 4, Daniel Jackson at Minnesota, a really underrated wide receiver at Minnesota. Last year he had 850 yards, 8 touchdowns, and like a lot of receivers on this list, he gets an upgrade at quarterback as well. He gets Max Brosmer, the FCS star from New Hampshire, who's a heck of a running quarterback, but he can also throw it. And Daniel Jackson is going to help him out so much and probably have a better year than he did last year. Number 3, Evan Stewart, the new wide receiver at Oregon. He transfers from Texas A&M. He's going into his 3rd year in college football. Last season, he only had 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, but the starter, Connor Wigman, at Texas A&M, the quarterback there, got hurt early on. That messed up the whole flow of the offense, if you want to call it that, because Texas A&M's offense was not great last year under Jimbo Fisher. And Mike Petrino was supposed to call plays, but Jimbo had most of the control on that, so it just messed up the whole flow. But Evan Stewart under Dan Lanning's offense and with Dylan Gabriel at quarterback is going to be so fun to watch this year because he has the speed. He is so electric, and he can do anything you ask him to. Number 2, Emeka Egbuka at Ohio State, 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns, I think, in 2022. Was expecting him to have an amazing year last year, and that just did not happen. They struggled with quarterback, with Kyle McCord at quarterback. It wasn't like he was fine, but he wasn't C.J. Stroud, and he wasn't what Emeka Egbuka was used to at that position, so kind of brought him down as well. This year, with Will Howard at Ohio State, I think Emeka Egbuka will come back to prime play-in position like he was in 2022, and I think with his full potential, he is one of the top 5 to 10 receivers in college football. But at number 1, Tez Johnson at Oregon. God, Oregon's going to be so fun to watch this year. Dylan Gabriel at quarterback, Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart at wide receiver. You got Jordan James at running back. The defense is awesome. It's just going to be so fun to watch. I can't wait. But Tez Johnson came off a 1,200-yard, I think 10-touchdown season last year, and he was sharing the ball with Troy Franklin. It's crazy. But this season, he's going to be the number 1 target besides Evan Stewart. And that offense is going to be electric. Now, he started off at Troy, spent his first 3 seasons at Troy, came over to Oregon last year, so he's going in his 5th year of college football. Just a veteran and so smart, and he is my number 1 receiver in the Big Ten this year. But yeah, guys, that is my full top 15 ranking of the receivers in the Big Ten. Comment what you disagree with below. I'm sure there's a lot because, man, this was a tough list to make. Like I said, especially on the bottom half. But next, I have to do my ACC wide receiver rankings in the G5, and then I'll make a list of all the top 10 or top 15 receivers in the country, and that should be a fun one. It's going to be a hard one, but it should be fun. Follow us on TikTok, 3&Out CFB, and on Twitter, 3&Out_CFB. But I appreciate y'all for watching.